If you have ever wondered why it always seems to happen to you, why the people who ended up hurting you the most were the exact ones you trusted the most, there is a reason. It is not bad luck. It is not a character flaw. And it is certainly not weakness. It is something far more calculated. Genuine people are not random targets for a manipulator. They are the preferred ones. There is a quiet cruelty in how this works. The very qualities that make you a good human being, your capacity to trust, your deep empathy, your loyalty, and your natural willingness to give people the benefit of the doubt, are the exact markers a manipulator is trained to hunt for. In his masterwork, The 48 Laws of Power, author Robert Greene warns that the most dangerous person in any room is not the one who is actively plotting against you. It is the one who assumes everyone else is just as honest as they are. This video is not about forcing you to become cynical, bitter, or cold. It is about decoding the exact architecture of why this keeps happening to good people, and unlocking the tool you need to finally stop it. It starts with the very first thing a manipulator looks for. Not your money. Not your weakness. Your trust. Part 1. Trust is not a flaw, but it is a target. Genuine people operate on a simple, unspoken internal rule. If I am honest with you, you will choose to be honest with me. For the most part, this rule serves humanity well. Most people are not predators. But this clean worldview creates one massive, structural vulnerability. Genuine people extend trust by default. You require a clear, glaring reason to doubt someone, rather than a checklist of reasons to believe them. Manipulators understand this flaw in the system perfectly. They don't waste time trying to earn your trust over months or years. Instead, they simply mirror your behavior, acting in a way that gives your mind no immediate reason to question them. And because your default setting is set to trust, that mirror is usually enough to let them in. In his groundbreaking research on human behavior and thinking, Fast and Slow, Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman proved a fascinating feature of our biology. The human brain is naturally wired to believe first and question second. Skepticism takes active, burning energy. Genuine people simply skip the energy-draining questioning phase more often than the average person. Think about the last time a colleague or acquaintance asked you for a favor that left you feeling slightly uneasy. Maybe it was a coworker asking you to put your name on their incomplete project, just this once. Or a friend asking to borrow money with a chaotic story that didn't quite add up, but you stayed silent because you didn't want to seem rude or suspicious. You said yes, not because you were foolish, but because the internal discomfort of doubting them felt far worse than the risk of being taken advantage of. That brief, quiet moment of hesitation is the exact window a manipulator relies on. But trust is only the door. Once they're inside, they need something stronger to keep you from walking back out. That's where your empathy comes in. Part 2. Empathy becomes the open doorway. A genuine person does not just listen to a story, they physically feel it. When someone tells you a narrative of hardship, your brain skips logical evaluation entirely and jumps straight into rescue mode. This is empathy operating exactly as nature intended. But manipulators have weaponized this beauty. They know that a well-crafted tragedy completely bypasses a person's critical thinking. In his definitive book Influence, psychologist Robert Cialdini famously documented the reciprocity principle, the human urge to give back when given something. But manipulators use its darker twin, sympathy exploitation. Once your brain registers genuine sympathy for someone, it aggressively resists the idea that they could be lying to you. Cognitive dissonance sets in. The human mind cannot easily hold the thought, I feel deeply sorry for this person, and this person is actively conning me, at the exact same time. This is why, when the deception is inevitably exposed, genuine people take the longest to accept reality. You aren't being naive, your brain is simply fighting to protect the empathy you invested. Picture that one person in your social circle or workplace who is perpetually trapped in a crisis. There is always a sudden emergency, an unreasonable boss, a tragic falling out, or an unfair stroke of bad luck. Every single week it feels urgent. Every single week you give your time, your energy, or your advice to help patch their life together. Months down the line, you find out half of those crises were wildly exaggerated, and the other half were entirely self-inflicted to gain attention. The script changed every week, but the outcome was always identical. You walked away emotionally exhausted, and they walked away satisfied. You were targeted because your empathy was the perfect fuel for their engine. Trust got them in. Empathy kept you giving. But neither of those works long-term if you ever push back. So manipulators make sure you never do. Part 3. The avoidance of friction. Most genuine people value social harmony over personal victory. You dislike unnecessary confrontation, not out of fear but because creating tension feels deeply uncomfortable to your nature. Manipulators can sense this boundary aversion within minutes of meeting you. They conduct minor, low-stakes tests to see how you react when a small boundary is stepped over. If they push slightly and you yield just to keep the peace, you have inadvertently handed them a psychological roadmap. Dr. Robert Hare, a leading global authority on manipulative and psychopathic personality traits, noted that skilled manipulators test boundaries early and often. Why? Because they know most polite people will not enforce a firm limit the very first time an infraction occurs. They bank entirely on your polite delay. Think of the friend who routinely leaves you sitting alone at a restaurant table for 30 minutes, sends a casual "on my way" text, and rolls in without a genuine apology. The first time you say, "Don't worry about it." The second time you mention it gently. By the 10th time you have adjusted your life around their disrespect. They never changed because your silence trained them on exactly how much friction-free space they were allowed to occupy at your expense. So far this might sound like it's about specific bad habits. Trusting too fast, feeling too much, avoiding conflict. But there's a deeper reason this keeps happening with different people, in different situations over and over again. Part 4. The hidden pattern of recognition. Here is the hard truth that very few channels will explain to you clearly. If this cycle of manipulation keeps repeating in your life, it is not because the world is randomly filled with bad actors. It is because manipulative people possess far better pattern recognition for genuine people than you do for them. It is not paranoia, it is behavioral screening. A manipulator scans a room for highly specific visible signals. Someone who over-explains themselves when no one asked for a justification. Someone who apologizes instantly for things they didn't cause. Someone whose body language physically shrinks when saying the word "no." These are beautiful, pro-social traits in a healthy relationship. They are not flaws to be fixed. But to a predator, they are red as green lights. And that distinction matters because the goal here is not to change who you are. It's to change what you do with these traits once you can finally see them being targeted. In The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel observed that people do not make decisions based on cold reality. They make them based on the internal stories they tell themselves about reality. Genuine people consistently tell themselves a story that every single person deserves a second, third, or fourth chance. That story is noble. But it is also the exact narrative a manipulator relies on to keep themselves insulated from your consequences. Knowing this pattern exists is the first shift. But knowledge alone doesn't stop the next manipulator from finding you. What actually does is smaller, more practical, and easier than you'd expect. Part 5. Reclaiming power without losing your soul. The antidote to manipulation is not to build an emotional fortress, shut down your heart, and stop trusting humanity. A life lived without trust is not safety, it is isolation. The strategy requires changing 2 precise operational habits. First, stop granting full trust as an upfront gift. Shift your system so that trust is distributed gradually, strictly in proportion to proven, consistent behavior over time. You can still enter every interaction with warmth and good intentions, but keep your full trust behind a timeline of consistency. Second, master the 3-second rule. Manipulators rely entirely on velocity, the rapid-fire favor, the immediate emotional plea, the high-pressure agreement before you can process the request. When put on the spot, force yourself to sit in the absolute discomfort of silence for 3 seconds before speaking. Saying, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you tonight," costs you nothing, but it gives your logical mind the critical buffer it needs to catch up to your hijacked emotions. That single pause destroys a manipulator's greatest weapon, urgency. Being a genuine person was never the problem. It will never be the problem. What you just learned does not belong to the people who hurt you. It belongs to you now. The next time someone moves a little too fast, asks a little too urgently, or shares a story that pulls at you a little too perfectly, you will not need to become cold to protect yourself. You will simply pause, watch, and decide on your own terms. That is not losing your trust in people. That is finally making them earn it. Cognilux. We don't motivate. We clarify. Subscribe before someone uses this on you.